Welcome to Up Close, Meet the Poet Behind the Verse. Here, we showcase one poet a season with an interview, poetry reading, and giveaway. It is our goal to introduce the person behind the poems. I am your host, Reverend Maria Erke, and Julie is out this evening. But first, I need to acknowledge we recently lost someone very special in our community. Hardy Coleman, a fellow up-close poet and friend to many. Hardy was a man of great integrity, talent, and character. Our condolences go out to the love of his life, Petey, and his children. Hardy, we miss you. This evening, our Spring Up Close showcase is our 21st poet. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. I need to remind our Zoom audience to remain muted during the duration of the show. A shout out to our sponsors, Cracked Walnut and the League of Minnesota Poets. And I need to remind us all that we're being recorded for a future video on YouTube, our YouTube channel. And if you visit, please subscribe. So with that, sit back. I would like to introduce you to our Spring Up Close poet, Catherine Stenzel. Catherine comes to us tonight from Beltrami Island State Forest in northwestern Minnesota. She is 30 miles from the Canadian border in an 800 square foot cabin surrounded by 60 by 40 miles of pines. A picturesque location she shares with her husband Joe and their 2 dogs. Catherine was born in 1950 to an Irish mother and Syrian father, first generation American. She grew up Catholic with her brother in Marshfield, Wisconsin, graduating from high school in 1968. Catherine received her undergrad in English and attended night school for her master's. She taught high school literature and creative writing for 10 years. In the early 80s, she earned her MIB and entered the corporate world for 30 years, working for Fortune 500 companies in San Diego and Minneapolis. In midlife, she found her way to Buddhism and her sensei teacher, Okimura, through Aikido, a form of martial arts, and she met her husband, Joe, in 1995. They moved to northern Minnesota in 99 and opened their own dojo practice hall. In addition, Catherine was the director for the county's victim services. Currently, she is retired, still living in the north with her husband, Joe, and their 2 dogs. Without further ado, let us welcome Catherine Stenzel. Catherine, you are in your 70s today. Life has dramatically changed. The scuba diving gear stored away, the Harley parked. Happily, you find yourself in the prime writing years of your life. In fact, there is a story you need to tell. For the last 8 years, you've been writing Tears for the Samurai about the life and teachings of Zenko Okimura. He was your sensei for over 20 years. Sadly, he passed away in 2022. Okimura was born in Japan and was 7th degree black belt in Aikido. Can you explain what that means and share with us the 2 other interesting parts of him you told me about?
Sure. I'll start with the 7th degree black belt. Aikido is often called the martial art of peace, and you have to really see it to believe it. It's very effective as far as defense. And the first 5 tests are all physical, and then you get into the black belt ranks, and there's 10 of those. There's just a handful of 9 and 10 dans in the whole world. And my teacher, Okimura Shihan, was a 7th. So he's up there too. Let's see. Did you have another question?
Yeah, it's the other 2 things about him that you told me.
Yes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Shingon Buddhist priest, trained in Japan, at a very prestigious monastery, Koyasan Monastery. And he was given oversight of a number of temples sequentially, both in Japan and in Hawaii, where he grew up. And the other interesting part of his life is that he is a was I keep saying is in the present tense because I still can't believe he's gone. Um, he was a samurai descendant, and that's pretty hard to prove because the Allies destroyed records on purpose to break down the Japanese identity. But fortunately, both the family sword and a lot of the documentation got out of Japan with Okimura's family. So there's lots to say about the samurai, and we'll touch on that as we go along.
Well, I understand the code of the samurai runs throughout your book, and they are the virtues samurai live by. How many codes are there, and can you tell us about number one and number two?
Well, number one is honor, number two is duty, and every clan has those two virtues. There's no clan set of virtues that doesn't have honor and duty. And then there's a small set of virtues that the clans chose from to reflect their priorities. And just real quick, I want to give you the ones that Okimura's family chose way back hundreds of years ago. So there was honor and duty, of course, and then wisdom, benevolence, courage, propriety, and reciprocity. And to give you an idea what those mean in plain English terms, wisdom is truth, benevolence is humanity, courage is valor, not much different. Propriety is etiquette and proper manners, which in Japan is considered a sign of respect to one another. And reciprocity is good conduct and care for the community. Now, I'll try and give you a brief overview of the first two that River mentioned. The first one, as I said, is honor, and that is extremely important even now in Japan. And the katana, the wakizashi, the shorter sword, is the representative of honor. And what it's most known for is when honor is lost, a samurai would commit seppuku, which was a ritual suicide. Not really a suicide, a ritual taking of one's own life. And even in battles, when one clan was going to be defeated, many samurai would take their own lives rather than become captured. And then finally, there's duty, and that's the one that's represented by the long sword, the katana. And the crux of it is allegiance. Allegiance to first to the Lord, the daimyo, and the Lord, the daimyo, has allegiance to the shogun. Now, this kind of feudal governance lasted for many hundreds of years, from about the 11th century to the end of the 19th century, when the Meiji government desorted, so to speak, would not let samurai wear their swords in public anymore. And there's a long story behind that, which I'll spare you from.
Well, you
That
have
does it.
You have a poem from that book, the haiku, that you were going to read to us. And we're actually going to do a giveaway today
Right.
with it.
Which one do you want to do first?
How
The
about you?
giveaway or the poem?
You can let's read the poem.
Okay.
Cool. You could show it too.
Okay. Too many papers. See if I can.
Pull it back a little bit.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. That's what's you're gonna get in the giveaway. So you want to read it and then I'll explain the giveaway.
Yeah. Okay. These are 7 haiku that I wrote in honor of Okimura for his memorial service. None of us knows when the last hunt will come, our swords beneath our pillows. Unrippled koi pond, shuffling feet in unison, chins bob near our chests. None of us deserves such a teacher, but we try, one-winged dragonflies. Cherry blossoms fall, blessed katana bows beneath, one dewdrop on steel. One-legged crane stands still, persistence with a purpose, though winter trembles. Crimson blossoms fall, brown leaves hide the reckoning. I'll miss, I'll miss, miss. I laughed at myself. 70 years of pilgrimage. Ha! I put down my brush. There
So
you have it.
everybody, we're gonna do a giveaway with that, and that means that we're gonna play a little number game. And so in the chat, you have one guess to, and it's between 1 and 50. Whoever picks a number closest to the number that we have chosen without going over, it'll be the winner. So have fun, put it in the chat. So next question I have is, do you have a writing process?
I'm sorry.
Do you have a writing process?
Oh, I thought we were going to go through with the numbers, but that's fine. My writing
Oh,
process. Yeah, I've had one from the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean, I've been fascinated with words my whole life. And so the writing process goes like this, and it's the same every time. Some big chunk might be the title of a poem, drops into my head, where I'm going to do the creative part, and into my heart, the actual poem begins to develop. The second thing that happens is I go outside, always into nature as close as I can get. Here, of course, I'm fortunate. And I take a notepad and a pen and whatever else seems appropriate, and I walk. And I let the idea percolate, and I take notes, and usually my dogs are with me, and they help me ground myself because, of course, I have to pay a little attention to them. And then the next thing is I come back and I handwrite, always handwrite the first version of the poem. Some people like to do it on computer. For me, the physical act of writing the poem actually encourages the creativity. And after I've handwritten it in haste, I like to say, write in haste, correct at leisure, or
mhm.
revise at leisure. I let it sit for a while. And eventually, after anywhere from 3 to 6 revisions by hand, I'll word process it. And from there, it can sit for anywhere from a day to 10 years. I'm working on a poem now that's about 15 years old.
Mhm.
Sometimes it takes that long to get it, the energy right for it. And I guess I would close my answer to that question by saying, I feel like the poems come out of the void from an emptiness that has everything and nothing, and that each poem is a gift. I'm hardly creating it myself, and the void is the place that the words come from.
Thank you. Um, well, now we're going to travel way back to your childhood in Marshfield, Wisconsin. Can you tell us about your first memory of words sitting on your father's lap?
Yes, I have been fascinated with words ever since I saw squiggles on a piece of fridge that every Sunday we'd go to church, come home, have bacon and eggs, and then he would pull out the funny papers and sit me on his lap, and he would read them to me. And I was fascinated that there were all these words and stories coming out of what just looked like black squiggles to me. And the one that he read to me most often, other than Beetle Bailey, was Prince Valiant, a medieval knight. And so Prince Valiant became my first experience with words. But just a quick note on the second experience, when I went to first grade, I had a Notre Dame nun as a teacher, and she, the very first thing she did when she was teaching us the alphabet and the very beginnings of how to spell and read, she took a big piece of construction paper and wrote big letters G, O, D, and all kinds of yellow sun rays around it. And she held it up and pointed with the other hand and said, "This says God." And then she said some words about God. And I was fascinated because, of course, in church I had heard all about God, and that this was an actual name for God that was on a piece of paper was just astounding to me. So that's where it all started. My dad and sister Ernest.
Your father was a huge influence on you growing up. One way you followed in his footsteps was flying. How old were you when you began, and when did you fly alone?
Well, I began flying as soon as I could touch the rudders and the seat, all the way forward. And my dad and I would go up about once a week on the weekend or in the evening when he wasn't as busy. And so 11 years old when that started. And he gave me lessons up to the point that I soloed, which was on my 16th birthday.
And now we're going to flip to, we're just going all over the place. The dogs have a special spot in your heart. And currently, you have Willa, a German Shepherd, as your service dog, and a little Sheltie named Sancho. Now, often they can be sometimes be a subject for you, and you have a poem for us, I believe.
Yes, I do. It's called Oh Sweet Spot. And Spot could be any dog, but if you were born early enough, maybe like late 40s or early 50s, you might remember a reader that had stories about Dick and Jane and Spot and Puff. the kitten. Spot, of course, the dog. So we have Oh Sweet Spot. Oh, sweet. Oh, Spot. How oft has the confusion of cornfield stubble received thy quanked and dotted piles and puddles, where bejewbejeu bugs swarm anon with mithered drops and fingerlings, pinched and oh spot up top with purient smile, poised upon thy snout like a bass-thornish child. No mincing cur, no squeamish canid, no prancing princeling. Rather, such is, oh, Spot, this scamus Palomore, this deep north rabbit scrambler, runs with foxes, makes chipmunks scatter, leaves steaming remnants, whiffling through the gay tool wood, oh sweet, oh Spot, slanting aside the frozen fields, oh Spot, conceived and birthed from burning belly, squeezed, buffeted out slithy loins. Oh suckerback, oh bickers black, the gods of nether regions permit the burbling drops with sound of bells, without their clappers. Oh, shun the smells of day-old rabbit, that wind-relieving rabbit, preceded by incomparable toots of faux perfume that knocks us shock-breathed to the couch of gloom. Oh, sweet Spot of bitey teeth and catchy claws, rest a while neath the dum-dum tree. Do heap fall to thy scraggy knees. Slide all whimsied into your sweet spotted dreams of fire-eyed rats and wild-born furry cats.
Mhm. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You worked in the corporate world in finance and accounting for 30 years in San Diego, and then in 1990 you moved to Minneapolis. Well, it wasn't 30 years, it was altogether 30 years. During this time, you weren't writing poetry very much, but you were part of publication of business books. What were those about?
Business books were about business management, in particular, financial management. And at the time, the things I was writing about, and I should say writing with my husband, Joe, I was the sort of technical expert and he was the ruthless editor. And so the books were quite novel in their time. And it wasn't all about debit and credit. It was about financial leadership.
Okay, cool. Um, Still in the corporate world in 91, began to get interested in martial arts and started to learn Aikido and Yido? I don't know if I
I
said it.
don't,
Yido, that's what it was. Can you explain them to us?
sure. And I think I'll pause here and just make a comparison of my teacher, Okimura, with myself. We were we practiced Buddhism. We practiced Aikido. And Iaido is a sword form. So in a way, I was linked to his samurai past. So all three of those things, among others, brought us close together. Iaido is the katana art with the long sword that you think of when you think of samurais. And there are 12 katas or series of movements that have to be learned. And they are about different combat situations, standing, kneeling, side to side. There's another one I'm not thinking of. Oh, two opponents rather than just one opponent. Sometimes the kata was about dealing with two opponents at once. So that's Iaido. And Aikido, which we've mentioned a little bit, and I said was the martial art of peace, was based on the sword, empty hand, but based on sword work. The art of peace is manifested in principles like take care of your partner, use only as much force as needed to control the situation, and use the attacker's energy against him or her. I'll give you a quick example of that. Let's say someone is going to hit you over the head with a sledgehammer or a hammer. So picture your attacker coming at you with a hammer raised and going to bonk you right in the middle of your head. All you have to do in Aikido is wait until that hammer starts to come down. That's the point of fullest force. And just turn and let the attacker run into a wall or whatever's in front of him, because the energy that's behind his attack can't be stopped at that point. So that's just a little about Aikido.
Just a little trick. Um, you met your husband Joe in 95 and moved to, oops,
Beltrami Forest.
Beltrami
Yeah.
Forest. In 99, you had time to write poetry again. Was it hard to pick up poetry once, or did just poems start pouring out?
I never really stopped writing, but those years in corporate really cut down on the time I had. And so when my time started to open up, the poems just rushed back in. I've been missing them.
And I think you have a poem for us about the North. I think is it the one when you're driving?
Yeah, I don't talk about that, but I think it's kind of obvious. Driving on a forest road called Thompson Forest Road, and that's where this incident happened. Shall I read?
Yeah.
Okay. Waiting on a snowy roadside. Waiting on a roadside, watching death come to you. Broken back, legs gone limp. Less and less your forelimbs thrust against the snowbank. You drag your hindquarters by inches toward the ridge. Extend your neck toward the snowy rim. I feel the wrecked beats of your heart as you haul desperately your ruined body parts away from me, who brought you death. Now you lie still, and I kneel beside, stroking your lovely brown-black hide. You relax under my hand as with a friend. Perhaps you know somehow I am. Stunned and quiet, you cannot name, you cannot guess. Your wild eyes, deep brown lakes of infinite wilderness, clouding towards darkness, staring into the blindness of disappearance. I too stare into the void of those who died, my eyes upon you, my hand on your side, yet still you breathe, like all of us, longing for breath, leaning toward light. My boots crush whispers on the snowy road as I step away to give you unbroken space. I await the gun coming to me, waiting with you on the snow-pressed road where no one travels, no one goes, and you and breath parting ways as we all begin and no one stays. More and more your forelegs weaken, your head droops to side. For you, there will be no second rise, no graced leaps, only the dusky ascent. For now, I stand expecting the gun, and when it comes, I will take it and extinguish your last wild run. But when the gun finally arrives, you have gone, your eyes staring out open lids as over the edge you slip. Your slack pink tongue slipped between your delicate lips. Back at your side, I stroke your neck and feel you go. I am so very sorry, yet can't come close to what I want to say. And anyway, my speech is foreign and far away. I want to run with you, unbroken again, or to that shadow place for what I've done. The gun has arrived, but not for you nor me, for I will leave, and you are free.
Oh, thank you. It was powerful. An ending. See, you were raised a Catholic,
Yes.
went through Catholic school from first grade on through into college. And today you're a Buddhist. What drew you to Buddhism?
Well, I was what has been very often in a stereotype way called a spiritual seeker. And I, of course, started with Catholicism. Then I was an atheist for a number of years. And then I started exploring back into Catholicism in a Benedictine convent. I wasn't a nun, but I went to a lot of their services. And on and on and on through many different paths, none of them ever satisfying me or my questions. My questions were, what's real? And knowing that, I wanted to know the best way to conduct myself. And Buddhism was the first path that answered those two questions. Answers are too long to go in this space.
Well,
So it was very practical. It is a very practical path.
that's your journey led you to be Okumura's student, teaching at your own dojo, writing his story tape. What does it all mean to you?
I'm sorry, I have a dog whining here.
What does it all mean to you? All of how your journey's all been led with
Well, let's see. I guess the main thing I've been thinking about as I write this book, Tears for the Samurai, is how I can honor my teacher and my martial arts community. It's my privilege and my responsibility to share what I've learned. It's an opportunity to continue to write, and it's another way to be involved with my own spiritual journey.
that was beautiful. And to go with that, you've had a spirit animal guide you for the last 40 years. And you have a poem you wrote about it. Can we
I
hear it?
do. And my spirit bird is a raven. I first met the raven. I was on a motorcycle trip, had ridden my Harley up to Big Sur in Northern California, and ravens kept circling over me, and didn't seem to be taking any note of anyone else. And that night I dreamed ravens, and I was kind of disturbed that I couldn't fly. I would just be running along the ground underneath them. So, after that, the raven visited me often in my dreams and occasionally in the living world. So here's the poem for my spirit bird called Raven Laughing. Gloss black wings, scissor slice harsh air. Winter sun shimmers purpling feathers, wing on wing, a suchness leaving tiny vapor trail of raven breathing. In one long glide, he skims forest, river, fields that take me stumbling hours to cross. And he just cocks his black-maned head, looks at me, a puffed pink lump, squinting up at Raven, laughing. Contrail crystals stream off his wingtips, hooked black-bladed beak slits and severs space up there while I stand aground listening for what I'm sure I hear in one black cackle, a raven laugh. The aerobatics do not stop, and he's too busy being to notice me or hoot. He just squawks at his own dark brilliance and at my lurching run. So easy he fits his raven's skin. No worry etches his black eye. Effortless he shapes his raven wings against ever more sky. And I, and I, and I gulp, tear up, and wish my breath would sit sheathed in bone and flesh so well as this glossy feathered one gliding traceless winds, while all I can do is cry out to this splendid raven, leaving with no sound.
Hmm. Well, that is the end of our interview. Now, do you have a 5-minute little poetry reading for us?
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. Um,
Mm.
this one was written 2 years ago after I had a near-death experience with COVID and seizures and life flights and all that sort of thing. And it's written in honor of my primary physician, Bob Anderson, who was with me through this experience. And the title is Any Dead Woman Can Tell You. Any dead woman can tell you it is not easy to crawl back over the bar. One side all marigolds and lullabies, one side chrysanthemums and requiems. The boatman's calloused hand brushes her cheek. The river's benediction blesses her feet. Death's stone finger points in no direction. A song damns his stone throat. The tongue ripples a desolation sound. Waterfall chatter beats her bones. The cataract's blade drawn out of stone. A dead woman's heart root crosses the bridge between. Wisdom dwells without knowing yellow, blue, or green. She sheds other side colors. Red trees grieve. The boatman's ferry nods fore and aft. Just so, The bar blocks the path. Somewhere between the boat and the bar, another is speaking, not near, not far. He calls for others who flit, fuss, and fret, while she embroiders spun again gold into net. Another calls, cover the leavings. Ending isn't an option, he whispers a name. Vigorous voice in the dark. His hand hovers over her idle heart. Another advises, we should stop now. No, says the first, as he clears her brow. His strength now incredibly near, calm, with shadowy secrets, his voice in her ear. It is all right. You will stay here. Am I going? She whispers her question. And death, false familiar, hollow as glass, on the bar and the bridge that she's already passed, somewhere and nowhere and in between, wind in the reeds at the unyielding bar. She thrashes and grapples 7 stars. Cunning boatman deeps and pulls his vessel away. As he fades, he chuckles, then calls out, you know you can't stay. I am here, she says. Is it not so? She shushes the voice of the obsidian crow.
I love the ending of that.
Well, she wins for that one anyway. And the last one is another dream-based poem called Bewildered. And it is from a real dream. I dreamed a bear last night. I want to go home, she said, her midnight pelt against blackest light. Am I here? She asked, head low, swaying side to side, tired as darkness as she passed. The bear held a thought-free wish, spoken only in the sanctity of dreams, where truth is clear and, as it seems, the wayfinding bear, terribly lost, did not conceive of this, nor ken the cost. Her ungrounded locus shifted and begot cessation. Her shaded homing beacon beamed no location. Her ancient instinct seized, turned unfamiliar, like staring into a pond through a silver mirror, and desolation ever heaving nearer. Am I here? She asked again. As crackling conviction emerged, she was beyond wretchedness, inside a shadowy lacuna of misery and no way to express. Ruptured certainty spattered out the truth. She had no others of her kind. They too were lost far from their nation. Only hissing waste and want with blind causation. Her body, new return, was not in her constellation. I find the valor to ask her, can you find it? As before, her singularity, one note, I want to go home, was all she said. But her body spoke, draped in fire season smoke, that showed the verity in her bones, always, always coming home.
Mm. Oh, that was nice. Well, do you have one more poem for us? Would you have it?
Sure. Let me find it. I didn't know we were going to end that early, but I did bring some other ones. Hang on. Looks like we have enough time for a little bit longer one rather than a short one. Since we have so few people here, do you want one that's a little lighter? Or again, something my friends who are writers call me the dark poet. And as you can see, I have earned that epithet. But I do have some lighter ones too.
Give
Raise
us
your
a
hand if you want a lighter one.
We got 2 hands.
Everybody.
Yep,
Okay.
everybody.
Yep. Okay. And Joel will appreciate this one because the title is in French. Le mot juste, which means the right word. And writers like Deborah and Kathy does a lot of writing, and certainly Joe and River, of course, will understand the feeling of searching, searching, searching. Even if you've done the thesaurus, it's just not right. That one word that you need. Deborah, I know you've done that. Okay. A rapid shiver trickles down my spine. I almost had it. It was nearly mine. The word's proximity makes me shake in the ruins of verbs. One was awake. Perhaps I can trace its lettered tracks, its scent. It held the gem, the pearl of what I meant. Maybe by stealth I can parallel its route, intercept its path, and catch le mot juste. Soon enough, I let that prey fade, and I slash my way to another line, another wreck, and stalk the motley word that teases me, teeters on my tongue, flashes its teeth, invites me closer, but remains just beneath. I raise up my courage for heroic assault on my own stagnant brain and the word that won't out. I nearly weep at my subverted morale, like a sleazy night in a trashy motel. Now, like a medieval knight, I raise my banner. For the charge on the word and a fortress keep, snug and safe from my neutered route, demoting my charge from vow to doubt. Not to be played with, I leave behind the whole broken piece, every line, and move to a pristine page and invite the rhyme to spread its splendor just this one time, but it refuses to brighten this expanse of white. My impulse now is to let go the fading scent, but I cannot. I must know where le mot went. I try to surround it like moat circles castle, but the nouns and adjectives prove too agile. Oh, how my poet's heart this grand chase despises. But just as my search fails, something else rises. Curiosity won't be quelled. So I ponder thickets of gerunds and adverbs out yonder. My heart pumps slower like an old motor idling, now waiting in place for le mot to find me, to decorate my page with I's dotted and crossed T's. Illuminate this parchment like the old manuscripts. Put me in monk's robes with the supply of quill tips. So many phrases await just the right words, and instead come abstract nouns, cliches, and weak verbs. I am doomed to parrot only what's been said before. Will my wordy constructions be the ones critics ignore? My failure to capture le mot fires my rage. Won't some muse transform me and perk up my page? Perk it up with flowing ink, causing each and every reader to smile and admire my rhymes, stanzas, and meter. And I sigh, leaning back in my chair. and something shifts like music on air. Suddenly, pen in hand, I'm on the edge of my seat as the treasury opens on Le Mot Juste and I meet. With quivering hand, take up my pen to write before Le Mot escapes, not returning again. But just as I almost write, put down my pen and stare at Le Mot. I can do better. I forgot what I just about wrote.
Mhm.
And that's it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well, let's find out who our winner was of the giveaway. We have
Yes.
um I it is Dan
Nipe.
Nelp.
Nipe.
Night. Okay, he is.
Yeah.
So Dan, you will have to put send Catherine a message directly to her with your address.
And you get the 6 haiku
Yep, and you get this.
with some trimmings.
I don't know. I don't know if you heard us.
Dan, are you there? I know where to get a hold of him.
Okay. Okay. Well, we had one more thing I wanted to mention that Catherine has been writing for some time is an epic poem, and it's currently 250 pages. It's called The One, and she's asked me to read the epigraph of this literary piece of work. So here we go. Symphonies flood the oceans. A whale song originates in one ocean and is heard by whales in all, who pick up the song, add to its splendor, then voice their own sounds that resonate around the planet. Waves of whale song rumbling in the oceans. The One presents a series of songs for all singers, for those who swim in dark, frigid oceans where melody arises seldom, as well as for those who bask in warm waters surrounded by the sounds of others of their kind. On our journeys, we all pass through the same oceans and sing our countless songs. How wonderful to know that our voyage, that others voyage with us. Listen now with an open heart to the melodies and let the song roll on. So I want to thank you, Catherine, for being our guest this evening.
My pleasure.
And thank you to the audience for joining us in this our summer up close interview will be with Lauren Nemi. It's rescheduled for June 27th because it landed on July 4th. So that can't happen.